Conquest is here as a new queue, letting you play battle mode on demand with random people all over the internet. The Infinity Conquest opens up in a little over a week and a half from the posting of this video, and today I'm going to be running you through the best decks in Marvel Snap right now for you to be farming these Infinity tickets, of which you can see I already have two myself. Let's go ahead and get right into it, shall we? In my opinion, the best deck in Conquest right now is definitely some iteration of this high evolutionary location lock control. What this archetype is essentially looking to do is when one of the two lanes that you need to win with one of the three location lockout elements, we have Storm, Professor X, and Spider-Man. With Storm, we're looking to pair her with something like Nebula or Cyclops or even the Thing to invest just a couple of cards and getting a lot of stats into a single path that can no longer be played to after it's flooded out. With Professor X or Spider-Man, we're looking to set up a deterministic lockout on turn 5 with the key information that Daredevil can provide. Then on the final turn of the game, after we've won one of the locations with a lockout tool, we have a massive Hulk that gets bigger from high evolutionary with unspent energy each turn, slamming down and winning one of the other locations. One of the nice things that this deck is able to do in the small number of situations where a massive Hulk is not going to win you another lane, or maybe your opponent was able to sneak some extra power into whatever locked out location you are playing, we have Doctor Doom that allows this deck to go wide as well. And a lot of decks have a very difficult time being able to contend with both the possibility of Doctor Doom or Hulk, meaning one of the two of them is almost always going to win you any spot in a given game. If you get a feel for what your opponent is doing and how they're playing, you can get certain victory in most spots. If you look to the second deck that I'd recommend for playing in Conquest right now in Marvel Snap, we have Sarah Disruption. Now, you're going to notice some parallels between this deck and the High Evolutionary Control deck we looked at a moment ago. The first is that we've got premium disruptive elements as a key part of this strategy as well. Instead of location disruption, we have Killmonger, Shang-Chi, and Enchantress as premium ways of interacting with what the opponent has on the board. This deck also has a powerful proactive game plan when it comes to putting its own large stats into play. Angela, Bishop, Hitmonkey, Kitty Pryde, Mysterio, all of these things allow us to put numbers onto the board so we can simply overpower our opponent in the spots where our disruption either isn't drawn or it's simply not lining up well into what our opponent is doing. The other thing that's similar to the deck that we looked at before is that you'll note that we're playing Doctor Doom in this deck list, which is actually something that's not super typical of Sarah Disruption decks that you see me recommend for playing on the ladder, but Conquest is a little bit different. The big thing that's different about Conquest is you can't just retreat a bad matchup that you're in for one cube and move on to the next one. In Conquest, you need to win all of your matches to get through to that ticket to the next level, meaning you need to have a plan for every matchup, and decks that have polarized poor matchups that they can't fix aren't going to be playable. The one type of disruptive card that gives the Sarah archetype a hard time in my experience is a turn 5 wave, locking you into a single play on that final turn of the game. Doctor Doom gives us counterplay in this situation. When the opponent locks us down to what would be a single play, Doctor Doom can spread power out across the board, giving us a chance to win those games even when they have their best counter card against us. This turns into kind of a game of cat and mouse as you're playing against a deck with turn 5 wave, because sometimes if they're going to wave you, you could just play out your Hitmonkey and your Mysterio and your Kitty Pryde on turn 5, get a bunch of stats, and then follow up with the Doctor Doom on turn 6, overpowering what the opponent's going to be looking to do. Then there's going to be other times once your opponent realizes that you're setting up to Doctor Doom where they're simply not going to wave you, meaning you have the opportunity to just play Sarah on turn 5 and then play your deck out organically, overpowering them that way. There'll be a little bit of jockeying for position and reading back and forth, and sometimes just flipping a coin and hoping that the line that you take works out. But I think the inclusion of Doctor Doom is key in this archetype when you're playing it in the Conquest format, so you can make sure you're not getting hosed by that single card. The third and final deck list I'd recommend for Conquest and Marvel Snap right now is a variation of the Stature, Black Bolt, Darkhawk deck list that has been powerful in Marvel Snap for some time now. This deck meets similar requirements to the other decks that we looked at a moment ago, and that we have a powerful, proactive plan with cards like Stature, Black Bolt, and Darkhawk putting big stats into play. We also have key disruptive elements with things like Korg and Rockslide proactively disrupting the opponent's draw, Black Bolt targeting their hand, and then reactive cards like Shang-Chi, or you can even play Enchantress in this deck to disrupt what your opponent is doing on their side of the board. We also get to slot in Luke Cage here as a way to disrupt high evolutionary decks that are looking to shrink our power. This deck list is the most expensive of all of the deck lists that I'm recommending here today. It has 3 Series 4 cards that are non-negotiable. Zabu, Darkhawk, and Stature are all necessary for this deck to perform at anywhere near optimal power level. Jeff and Silk are Series 5 cards and more recent additions to the deck that I do think are optimal and good, but I think you can substitute those cards for something like Nightcrawler and Nebula, for example, if you're looking to budget the deck list a little bit if you're short some tokens. If you're looking to see some gameplay with this particular deck, I'm actually going to have a Conquest Gold Gauntlet running on Saturday as my highlight, as a longer video to see if there's an audience for that. So if you enjoy Conquest content, make sure you're subscribed to the channel so you don't miss Saturday's video. These are the only 3 decks that I would recommend as the best decks in Conquest right now. That being said, I do think there's a few B tier deck lists that are all right choices. Let's go ahead and run through those real quick here as well for those who are looking for a little bit more variety in their competitive Marvel Snap. Now, I know I'm a little bit biased in my first B tier deck recommendation here, but I do think this stock bounce deck is still very good after the beast change, and it consistently puts out some of the absolutely biggest numbers you can get in Marvel Snap right now. The key thing to being able to play this deck in battle mode right now is understanding when your opponent's going to be waving you on 5 and knowing when to play your cards out proactively so you can just line up playing out a game-winning America Chavez on that 6th turn of the game after they lock you into a single play. Other things to note with this deck list is that Collector and Bishop are your 2 best tools for competing with the high evolutionary decks that are looking to lock you into a lane. Getting one or both of those into a Storm or Professor X path is a good way to continue adding points there after the fact in a way that your opponent's going to have a hard time keeping up with. Our next B tier deck list here is a high evolutionary variation for those of you that aren't interested in playing the location lockout cards that the first deck list that we talked about in today's video featured. What this deck list is essentially looking to do is you win one of your 2 locations with either Lockjaw putting a ton of power into play or Thor into Dracula, and then we have an absolutely massive Hulk powered up thanks to high evolutionary that we slam down to win another location. Overall, I think this deck is a little bit more susceptible to disruption than the lockout version that I recommended at the start, which is why I have this in the B tier, but I do still think it's quite good, and it will be my number 2 recommendation as far as high evolutionary decks go for playing Conquest and Marvel Snap right now. The final B tier deck list in my Marvel Snap Conquest recommendations for today is Sarah Silver Surfer. This deck list has some key disruptive elements with things like Killmonger and Juggernaut lining up really well into the location lockout decks. We also have the ability to add stats after the fact to a flooded location with both Silver Surfer and Mr. Fantastic that allow you to catch opponents off guard that think they have locations locked up that they really don't. This deck also can just put pretty sizable numbers into play. Brood creates 3 bodies for Surfer to pump up, and Maximus can even be a 2 energy, 9 power play on the final turn of the game when played in tandem with Sarah and Silver Surfer. We also get to leverage recently buffed card Dazzler as a wonderful 3-drop since this deck is playing things like Brood that helps it fill up the board. In closing, if you're looking to conquer Conquest and win your way all the way through the Infinity Conquest and collect as many medals as possible for lots of goodies in the shop, in my opinion, the best style of decks you can be playing right now is ones that offer a consistent game plan that notably don't get blown out by any single tech card from the opponent. They also tend to be playing their own powerful tech cards that can swing cards in your own favor, just in case your opponents are choosing to play cards that have polarized matchups. I would love to know what deck lists you've had the most success with in Conquest so far in the comments down below. I'd love to know if you're interested in seeing more Conquest content here on the channel. In addition to this video here this morning recommending some deck lists, my video Saturday morning is going to be a longer video showing an entire run through a gold Conquest gauntlet with the Silk, Stature, Black Bolt, Darkhawk, Good Stuff deck that I featured in this video. I'm curious to see if this format has some staying power in terms of content, or if it's just going to be something that I play occasionally on stream while sticking to shorter, more focused deck techs here on the channel. At any rate, I appreciate you watching all the way through the end of the video. Remember, if you enjoyed my musings on this topic, snap that like button. Hopefully we'll see you back again real soon for some more excellent Marvel Snap content here on YouTube.